Hi everyone, PoE 2 is just around the corner, and with it come a lot of questions from people that ask me what should I do with my points, which stash steps should I get, which supporter pack should I get. So I want to clear up some of those questions here. So if you're not familiar with especially PoE 1 and the way this will go forward in PoE 2, I will explain it all now in this video. So first of all, what you need to know is early access is going to be a paid early access. You have to spend the equivalent of at least 30 bucks to get the minimum supporter pack here, which is basically just the key to the game, and 300 points. And the same is true for all of the other supporter packs that you can buy. There's more expensive versions. They all give you the access to the game and some points that have the equivalent value of what the supporter pack costs, which is pretty nice. And on top of this, the bigger supporter packs also have a bunch of swag in there, like in-game transmogs, pets. There's even like some t-shirts and some hoodie you can get on the bigger supporter packs, like this one here. You get a t-shirt and a hoodie, and here you get a t-shirt. And then you have like the really big one where you also get the art book here. So the supporter packs kind of ramp up a lot in price, but you also get a lot of value out of them. Number one being the game itself, which eventually is going to be free to play when the early access ends, but that's going to be in like half a year from now or something like that. And then you have the points. Now, what do you do with those points? Well, most importantly, you need to buy stash tabs, and I want to show you what is available for like what we know in Path of Exile 1 and what you can expect in PoE 2. As far as I know, they have actually not given us the exact, MTX that you can buy in PoE 2 just yet. But generally, all of the MTX in PoE 1 that can be transferred over to Path of Exile 2 will do so. This means all of your transmogs, all of your weapon skins and whatever, anything that works with, whatever is in the game will be there. And this also includes your stash. Now, what do you need for your stash? There are certain stash tabs that you really need to buy if you want to play the game seriously. Now, if you just start out with the game and you play through the campaign in Path of Exile 2, you will actually not really have a lot of stuff in your stash. Like, you'll probably barely put anything there because most of the items that you wear will just be equipped, and then eventually replace them with better pieces. And okay, here and there you might want to save up, maybe like another resistance on your ring or something like that. So you put a bunch of stuff in your stash, and you will have like a baseline stash that look like this basically. It's just like little stash tabs. We'll probably have a few of those, and this will kind of carry you at least through the campaign. And this already brings you basically to the end game, and you're gonna be busy for maybe multiple days in order to even get there. So before you buy any of the tabs, if you don't have anything yet, you probably don't have to do that until at the very least you reach maps. But there are still some tabs that are really good for convenience, and something that eventually you will need in order to actually play the game effectively. So let's start with the currency one. So we have this here. This is what the currency tab looks like in Path of Exile 1 right now. So basically here goes all of the little stuff that you can use for crafting. And there's like Scrolls of Wisdom, for example. You're gonna have like Exalted Orbs, Chaos Orbs. It will look a little bit different because they've actually culled a lot of these different currencies, but I expect that it's gonna be somewhat the same. So it's probably gonna be like less stuff in there because there's less in the game, but it's gonna be the tab to get early on. So this will help you just to organize your stuff. You're going to have an easier understanding of what you actually have available. And you can also, for example, set affinities. So you can go here and right click on the tab. At least this works in PoE 1. I expect this to be the same in PoE 2, where you can select the affinity. And like this, every time you go to your stash and then you shift or control left click, it will automatically go into the right tab like this. So even if I'm, let's say, here in this tab, and I control left click, it doesn't go into my quad tab here, it goes into the currency. So this is what the affinities do. So it makes it easier to organize your stash later on. So that's also part of the reason why you really want to get the currency tab eventually. It also usually holds a lot more stack size. So if you look at this here, for example, there's not much in here, but for example, transmutes, they only stack to 40. And in the currency tab, for example, they go way higher. So in that case, you can have a lot more stuff stacked up here way more easily than throwing it into like random places in, like a tab like this here, for example. Then there's also the map tab. So the map tab will work probably quite differently in PoE 2, but it will also be there, I imagine, because there's going to be like a similar system with waystones. They're not maps anymore. So basically, you can just hold a bunch of maps here of every tier and of every map type. So you see this here, they have different names. This will work a bit differently in PoE 2, so I don't know exactly what this will look like. But if you go here, for example, you have these waystones, they have tiers, it goes all the way up to tier 15. And I'm not sure if there's going to be like, separate, maps or something like that. It doesn't seem so. It's probably just like, okay, you have the waystones, and then you can, open whatever tier that is on your Atlas, for example. But there's probably going to be also like these, boss fragments, for example, or like, special maps that you can open, like, the breach boss and, whatever. There's probably going to be more stuff to come here at the very least. And I would expect that at the very least long term, map tabs will be acquired in order to be like effective. And also you have the advantage you can stack them. It looks like they can stack already. There's like a number here, so maybe you can actually stack them just like that, and you might not really have to worry too much about the map tab, but long term I definitely expect that to be a very important one. Another relatively important tab, I think, is the divination card tab, which looks like this. I also expect it to be pretty much the same in PoE 2, to be honest. Divination cards are like these collectible card sets, and then you can turn them in at an NPC, and then you get like a certain item out of them. So this is basically like a target farm tool, and also like kind of like a community feature where a lot of these divination cards are actually designed not by GG themselves exactly, but by players that have played the game at some point and so on. So it's kind of like player made in many ways. And there's like tons of different divination cards, and this will probably be very similar in PoE 2. So if usually you don't really care that much about most of these because they have rather low value, and you can actually get away with like literally filtering out like 90% of them or so if you play PoE 1, but we have not really seen much about it in PoE 2. And well, we'll see how this will work. They have not actually shown much about divination cards. Right now I'm not 100% sure that they're even in the game, but at least down the line, this will probably be something that will really help you out, because there's a ton of them. In PoE 1, there's like 1,000 different divination cards or something like that, and they will definitely clutter your stash really fast if you don't have such a tab. So at least keep this in mind. If this becomes a problem and there's a lot of these divination cards, then eventually you want to get that tab. And for everything else, we kind of have to wait and see, I guess, with like what it's going to look like, because they have ported over some of the elite mechanics from PoE 1 into PoE 2. So for example, Blight has like these oils here in PoE 1, and these have become kind of merged with the Delirium. So Delirium tab looks like this here, where you also have like these different Delirium orbs. So these things don't exist anymore, but the Blight oils kind of exist in the form of like distilled emotions, they're called. And this is kind of like merged now. So I imagine that one or the other of those tabs will carry forward as well, for example. But I would not worry too much about this, because it's going to be endgame stuff. So at least once you get to play PoE 2, then you will see like what you need. Some of those league tabs are somewhat optional, I would say, but again, we'll have to wait and see like exactly like how many different currencies you get, or how many different like little items you get. But these are probably like the most important ones. So I would say currency is probably number 1, and then we have map probably number 2, and then we have like some other stuff like the the breach stuff. Like I think this is here in the fragments, for example. There might be like a fragment tab again. That is going to be quite useful, because it has a lot of like random little stuff that you're just going to find, like keys to certain bosses, and the breach splinters are here and these kind of things. So I guess we're going to have a lot of that in PoE 2 as well. Now, how do you actually get those tabs? You go into the shop, and you have to either buy those points, or if you bought one of the supporter packs, you will have some of those available. The points, you can imagine as something like a 10-to-1 ratio. So you see this here right now. So in euros it's slightly less than that, but in dollars, I think it's pretty much exactly a 10-to-1. So 100 points is $10. So these stash tabs can ramp up in price a bit if you look at this here. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, you don't need that many at the start. And this also kind of comes for free if you buy the supporter packs. At least the $30 one to get the early access. It's like a very fair price of what you're getting. Realistically, yeah, they deserve a lot more, and this is why those bigger supporter packs exist. But they also give you some value back in form of those stash tabs, for example. And the good news is that there is a regular stash tab sales. So I think in PoE 1 they happen every 3 weeks pretty regularly. And then some of these tabs will be like, minus 20, minus 30% or something. So this is when you can maybe also get a bundle or something to get like, like all of the relevant tabs or something. So keep an eye out for that, and you can get really good value on your tabs, and then you have leftover MTX or like leftover points to get like, maybe some transmogs or some portal skins or something like that. Another thing that I expect to come back is the quad tab. So you have seen this already earlier. Quad tabs are basically just like 4 normal tabs glued together, and it's like more zoomed out, as you can see. So this is normal tab, this is a quad tab, and this is really nice to have as like a dump tab. So basically everything that doesn't really go anywhere into like, you know, the affinity tabs, or like the currency one where, you know, all the currency goes, and the maps, you can like also set the affinity for maps here and so on. With quad tabs, you can just throw everything else in there. And this is really useful when you're mapping in a late game, where you just, you know, finish the map, you throw everything, like, you know, control click, you know, whatever can go into certain tabs will go there, like, you know, my scrolls will go to the currency and so on. But then everything else, like regular items, jewels, whatever you find, I just throw them into a quad tab. And then after like a few hours of mapping, for example, you sort it out. So this is kind of like how you play this more efficiently. And I do expect it's going to be somewhat similar in PoE 2 as well. So if those quad tabs are available, which I expect, then I would also get at least one of those, because it can be really valuable to save your time between maps. I don't think it's unlikely to assume that exactly on the early access launch, it's going to be a stash tab sale. So you can see this here as well. There's like these specials, for example. So keep an eye out for those when you open the game for the first time and you have your points available. Don't just throw everything on some MTX first. Make sure you also at least save some for those stash tabs, because you really want to have those later down the line. And you see here, for example, there's these bundles that you can save some, and you can also like always check like if there's like, you know, certain you know, specials available on sale, for example. As I mentioned, this happens every few weeks, and I would not be surprised about if this happens exactly on the launch weekend. For everything else, we have to wait and see, and like actually hear the confirmations and then see it in the game, I guess, how everything will work. For example, GG has also said that there should be trade and a trade site from day one of early access. We have not seen that in action yet. For example, for that, you also need premium stash tabs, which are usually like the bought stash tabs. For example, if you buy like a quad tab, then this is a premium tab. I'm not sure if this will work the same in PoE 2, but the premium tabs are basically any of the bought ones, or you can also upgrade your normal ones to premium, which basically allows you to trade, which yeah, I'm not sure how this will work otherwise. But for example, you can set them to public, and this is also the way that you trade. For example, you just put an item in there, you can set a price. So for example, I put like the scrolls here, and then I can set you know, any price, or you can have this drop down here. I expect this to work fairly similarly, but for this you also need to have those premium tabs in order to actually do this, else you can't actually make these public listings. So just something to keep in mind, that this also exists at least in PoE 1. We'll see how this will be in PoE 2, but other than that, yeah, my recommendation is get the currency, get a quad tab, at least one, and then, you know, probably the maps and, you know, whatever else exists for like the league mechanics, especially if you want to grind certain league mechanics. You know, if you really want to go Breach or so, there might be a tab for that. If you really want to go Delirium, there might be a tab for that, and so on. So you might want to look into those. And then whenever there's these sales every few weeks, this is when you can really get all of them basically very cheap. So keep that in mind. Hope this helps you out when PoE 2 launches. I'm very excited for the game. I have a lot more stuff coming, so I'm gonna be covering a lot of, you know, my builds and, you know, mechanics and all these kind of things. Stay tuned for that. Hope you like this video, and I'll see you guys next time.